70 hours a week to support this family. I'm doing all these things for you. How can you as a love addict wife argue with that? You look petty. You look like you don't care. Now, conversely, women, how women use their outside intensity is they will use work, but primarily they get sick and hurt. Think of it. Whenever we're sick and hurt, what happens? Everybody comes to our rescue. We don't have to invest. We get all the time and attention. And if it's too much, we drop into our sickness. We're not available to support you back. So that's a primary way. Women also use their children primarily. Animals, both sides will do that. You see, there's a big push. Everybody loves animals. Well, think of the dynamic with an animal. It's one directional. Every animal loves us unconditionally, completely. We never have to invest emotionally. It's all to us. So those are ways we pursue outside intensity. And how could you argue with that? A woman who wants to spend time with her kids as a husband to say, wait a minute, you're over pursuing your kids. God, you can't win that argument. Do you see how effective the outside intensity is for both the man and the woman? Now, one thing about women, they rarely will have sexual affairs outside of the primary relationship. They'll have emotional affairs. I'm sure you men know this. They'll have a male friend who they share everything with, but they've never had sex, and you're constantly frustrated and jealous by this, but you trust she's not having sex. Well, think of the dynamic. Usually this man she's sharing her life story with thinks she won't even tell you. He probably wants to have sex with her, but since there's a wall, she can use that wall. Hey, I'm married and I'm faithful. Do you see the power dynamic? She owns him and her husband, and she doesn't have to get intimate with either. Men, this isn't a slam against either side. Both sides do this, okay? Think through all of your relationships and how this dynamic has happened. So what happens is, for a period of time, and it could be a week, a month, even years, where there's this pure intensity, the love feeling that we all have, and it's working, all right? Then eventually what happens is the love avoidant gets triggered. They feel smothered. So they turn away and they get over-involved into their outside activities. The love addict freaks out. Their abandonment's been triggered. They chase. How many of you have suffered through 20 texts a day, phone calls, love letters, just being smothered by all of this attention? And you're like, Jesus, leave me alone. It's too much. I'm suffocating here, okay? So they turn away, and what happens is the love addict chases and chases and chases. They double down. They get more, more flowers, more. They keep going and going, all right? Well, eventually they drop into reality. They drop out of denial. They realize, my God, my partner's not there for me. And they turn, right? And they probably will pout and go quiet, or they start hanging out with their friends, or they get passive aggressive, but they pull away. And for a little bit, the love avoidance like, oh, thank God I can breathe. They're off my back. But then remember what their secondary fear is? Abandonment. So what happens? Now the love addict is turned away. See, in this relationship, one side is always showing their back to the other. They're always walking away. All right. And this is every relationship out of, think of it. Think of how you guys bounce back and forth, in and out, walking away from each other, fighting over things. This is the dynamic you're caught in. So the love addict turns away, and all of a sudden the abandonment of the love avoidant gets triggered. They come flying back. Oh my God, honey, I'm so sorry. You're so right. I've been so selfish. I spent too much time at work. Let's go on a vacation. Let me take you out to dinner. Women throw sex at it. You know, there are all these different ways. And they apologize. And the love addict turns back, goes, oh my God, see, I knew it. I knew you were perfect. I knew we had a great relationship. I knew this could work. And so they come back together and they have a brief interlude of massive intensity, go on trips, hold hands, spend time together, all that stuff, right? Until once again, the shift happens. This dynamic speeds up over time. I can literally, with clients in my office, watch them in the middle of a sentence go ding, 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 ding. It becomes incredibly destructive. Now, let me give you examples. Some of you are like, well, those aren't the relationships I picked. Well, it's possible you're too love avoidance. All right. This is like a doctor and a lawyer, right? They work 80 hours a week and maybe spend one weekend a month doing something. So their life is filled with outside intensity. They're entrepreneurs. They're chasing some big cause. Both of them are. And eventually they both feel abandoned. They reach out and go, they spend a weekend, a night, something like that. But that's enough. They get back into their careers, back into their outside pursuits. So if your relationship is really distant like that and really heavily involved in outside interests, most likely you're too love avoidance. Now, just because you're love avoidance in your primary relationship, you may be a total love addict with a coworker. See, it doesn't mean you're always stuck in one of these dynamics in every relationship. Most people will have a primary dynamic in their relationship and their secondary relationships will be the opposite. That's what's so crazy making about all of this. So now the other way of this gets expressed is two love addicts. Okay, we've all had that relationship. Intense sex, intense fighting, intense chemistry. These are when you see those TV reports of the ex who came over and burned the clothes on the front lawn and shot the ex and the kids, or took a sledgehammer to the car, all those violent type of responses, that's a love addict response, okay? Now, you put two love addicts together, they fist fight. They go at it. There's so much intensity. The abandonment is so palpable for both of them that the intensity is through the roof in every area of the relationship, okay? So that, to begin with, is the first thing you have to realize about every single relationship out there. Everybody is stuck in that dynamic. And the biggest stumbling block is the lack of information that this is even happening. If you want to change your life when it comes to relationships, you must immediately buy Pia Mellody. It's Piamelo or Mellody. Pia Mellody, Facing Love Addiction. I think you can get it used on Amazon for like $7. You should buy that book, give it to everyone you know. It will fundamentally change your life when it comes to relationships. Then the second book you need to buy is hers, which is Facing Codependence, because all of these dynamics are codependent dynamics. Now, this is where we get, where is this born? Why are we all codependent? Why are we all love addicts and love avoidance? Well, that's the essence of codependence and the what I call the unseen influences, what people don't realize that happens in parenting, okay? Unfortunately, again, because we all grew up on the barbershop bench watching how to be a parent, we haven't taken a class on relationships or anything. Our parents aren't bad people. I don't care how abusive they may have been. They weren't bad people. They just didn't know. It would be like if any of you heart surgeons, if I had a heart attack right now, would it be reasonable of me to expect you to perform open heart surgery? Of course not. You're not a surgeon. And we wouldn't judge you negatively for that. That's what breaks my heart about these dynamics. The second I bring them up, people get defensive. They go into denial. They go into shame. No, I don't want to admit I don't know about it. Why? Why? Look at what it's costing us to not step into this, to not face our denial and face our lack of knowledge in these areas. So when we have this information, we can actually pursue love. So I can't get into all the parenting dynamics that are in play here, but the basic gist is this. Because none of us have been taught healthy self-esteem, and because our parents weren't taught either, what happens is parents reach down and use their kids for emotional support, for self-esteem. If you ask most parents why they have a kid, you know what their response is? I want a mini me. That's not about the child. That's about themselves. They want someone they can mold that looks like them, sounds like them, touches like them, that they can play with and have as almost a toy. for themselves, for their own enjoyment, their own purpose. Well, one thing I had to learn about parenting, see, I have to say this, even though I'm an expert in parenting now, I still suck at it. The reason is how our brain works. Our brain seeks to repeat what it knows. It doesn't know right and wrong. It knows known versus unknown. So because my parents were perfectly imperfect, I learned things from them that are damaging. And so like clockwork, how many of you have said, I'm never going to say or do that to my kids, only to find out the second they're born, you hear yourself saying and doing the exact same things your parents did. It's neural pathways, okay? So just because I know this stuff doesn't mean I'm perfect at it. It's a process I still work on. I'm much better than I was, and I know as long as I keep working, I'll get better at it, okay? So Rana said, okay, yeah, that's very common. Most of us are both love addicts and love avoidance. Usually we bounce more to one, okay, than the other. But so what happens is, as parents, like my mother, all right? My mother, because she was adopted and her parents didn't teach her, I became, in a way, her surrogate spouse. She shared way too much personal information with me. That's one of the things parents do. She tried to make me responsible for her drinking. And you see this a lot. Parents get sick and hurt, and the kid becomes the caretaker to try and take care of them. Or parents get divorced, and you hear them telling their child how awful the ex-spouse is. That is one of the most damaging things you can ever do to a child. I don't care what the ex-spouse did. That sets your child up to be codependent and a love avoidant or a love addict. Please, if you've been through a horrific marriage, don't mention a thing to your children. When they get older, if they ask for information in their 20s and 30s and much older, that's the appropriate time to share that information, but not when they're a child. It is way too much for them, and it's incredibly damaging. So please, don't ask your child to be your emotional support. Get with an adult, a counselor, somebody to learn how to do that. So that's where this is all born. And people just don't realize, like most people don't realize, they think, well, I'm telling the truth about their father or their mother. Well, that's not the kind of truth your child needs, not at that age. What your child needs is to know they're safe and that both mom and dad love them, even if the father or mother has taken off. People would say, well, they don't love them. Well, you don't know that. You don't know that. That person may be in tremendous pain, and the only thing they know how to do is to leave right now. Okay? I'm not condoning it. I'm not saying it's okay. But for you to send the message that your ex-husband or wife doesn't love their kid is incredibly damaging to your child. So be very careful of that. Okay, I got a question here. How do we stop the dynamic? How do we make the avoider come towards us and stay there without backing off in long-term relationships? Well, Holly, I love the words you chose. How do we make? Please don't hear this as me trying to disparage you. Maybe you didn't think through the words you chose, but that's the first sign of codependence, that we think we can make somebody love us or not love us. It's not possible. Never. We never, ever, ever, ever have the power to make somebody like us or hate us. It's a choice they make on their own. They are responsible for it. I don't care what you did or what you do. You didn't make anybody feel anything. Okay? That's the first thing to realize. Now, I can take your question in two ways, Holly. One, how to manipulate somebody. Well, it's pretty simple. If you want to manipulate an avoider, go quiet. Just go quiet. Normally, as a love addict, you probably respond to their texts immediately. Take several hours. Take a day. Don't be so available. Watch. It won't take long. They'll come chasing you. They'll probably get angry. What's going on? Anger is always a sign of fear, and fear is one of three things: the fear of rejection,